Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to 1 Corinthians 15. We are now in class number 17, and we are still studying 1 Corinthians 15, verses 51 and 52. This is the rapture verses. This is one of the three great places in the Bible that you find the wonderful rapture verses. That's why we're spending a little extra time on it. This is actually our fifth class on those verses, on the rapture verses. And we've been through various aspects of the rapture over the last 4 weeks. This week, what we're going to look at is probably the question on everybody's mind is when? When's it going to happen? Pardon me. For those of you joining us at home, I'm sorry I didn't welcome you earlier. We welcome you here this morning. We're on a beautiful Sunday morning here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Not sure where you are, but we pray the Lord is blessing you, and we pray that you will be in the Word and have a wonderful week with the Lord. You can download the notes, by the way, if you just click on that little thing on your screen that says to download the notes, and you'll have the same notes that everybody here in the class has. So, question is, when is the rapture going to happen? And the answer that I can give you is, I don't know. I do know that we're one day closer today than we were yesterday, but I can't tell you a whole lot more than that. But we're going to talk next week about the 8 times in the book of Revelation that Jesus says, I am coming back for you soon. And Jesus uses the word soon 8 times in those 8 statements. So we know it's soon. We're not sure what soon means, but we know that it is soon. But there are 8 specific areas I want to go through today and talk about areas where the book of Revelation, where the Bible has shown us various details about when the rapture might occur. So let's start with the first one. The first one is, we know that the state of Israel had to come back into existence. It had to be reconstituted. So here's some background on that. In 925 BC, up until the death of Solomon, it was a single kingdom, and it was an independent kingdom. In fact, it might have been one of the most powerful countries in the world under Solomon. When Solomon died, God divided the land of Israel into 2. One of those went out of existence pretty quickly because they were pretty evil, and they also weren't legitimate. They never had a legitimate king in the northern kingdom. So they went out of existence pretty quickly. The southern kingdom hung around a little bit longer, but they developed so much sinfulness and so much idolatry, idol worship, that they eventually were destroyed in 586 BC. And at that point, God destroyed Solomon's temple, what was called the first temple. The Jews went into exile. 70 years later, they came back. This is their first exile. This one only lasted 70 years. The second one was a lot longer. This one only lasted 70 years. In 516 BC, the second temple was dedicated in Jerusalem. So the Jews had returned by that point, and God allowed them to rebuild the temple, and he blessed the rebuilding of the temple. That temple stood with major modifications, but that temple stood ultimately until 70 AD. This is about 40 years after Christ went to the cross. Interesting. 40 years in the desert, 40 years after Christ went to the cross. The Romans came at that point and destroyed the second temple. So no temple has existed in Jerusalem since that time. So it's been almost 2,000 years. There is no temple in Jerusalem. There has not been one in Jerusalem since that time. The Jews had a major war against the Romans at that time. They lost badly. Many Jews died. In 135 AD, they had a second war, the Second Jewish War. That was much worse. 2 million Jews died in that war, and at the end of it, the Emperor Hadrian, the Roman Emperor Hadrian, declared that the Jews needed to be scattered and totally leave Israel. So all the Jews were driven out of Israel at that point. And from that point until recently, there were no Jews in Israel. Very few. There might have been a few, but virtually no Jews in Israel for almost 2,000 years over that period. Israel was ruled by a whole bunch of different people during that period, mostly by the Muslims during that period. And the Muslims tried to stamp out most remnants of Judaism during that time. But that began to change in 1896 with what was called the First Zionist Congress. And the First Zionist Congress was put together by a guy by the name of Theodor Herzl. And interestingly enough, when Deb and I visited Jerusalem once, we visited his grave, and it's a big cemetery grave in Israel. He was the one who founded the idea that Jews should return to Israel. Up until then, Jews just assumed they'd be gone forever. But he began that process and started publishing that and putting it out there. And the Jews began slowly but surely returning. And in 1916, in the middle of World War I, the Muslims lost Jerusalem to the British. General Allenby of the British took Jerusalem, and at that point Jerusalem became British. And the following year, the Foreign Secretary of the British Empire, a man by the name of David Balfour, issued what was called the Balfour Declaration, and that allowed Jews to begin returning. So at that point, Jews began returning in detail to Israel. So over this period, first the idea came up, Jews should return, and then God made it happen. He allowed the opportunity for Jews to come back. The British allowed Jews to come back in. Eventually, after the war, after World War II, many refugees from the Holocaust came in as well. And in 1948, Israel was reconstituted. We know that one of the signs is that Israel has to exist at the time of the rapture. We know it has to exist for a whole lot of reasons I'm going to get into in a few minutes. But we know that Israel has to exist at the time of the rapture. So there's your first sign. The fact that and this one nobody can miss. It happened. It's already happened. It happened before I was born. But it happened already within the last 100 years that Israel is now back in existence. So we know that that has happened already. And by the way, the second thing Israel had to do, Israel at that point was in existence again. They were a sovereign state again, but they didn't really control all of Israel. That actually happened in 1967 in the Six-Day War. At that point, they took over East Jerusalem again, and also some other areas of Israel that they didn't properly. Gaza came in at that point, yeah. So that's kind of the history of how we got through this whole thing. So question is, was that prophesized? And the answer is absolutely, that was prophesized. It was all over the Bible. Isaiah said it many times, Jeremiah many times, Hosea, Ezekiel. The most famous prophecies of that are Ezekiel 37, the famous dry bones prophecy. That's in Ezekiel 1 through 14. I put part of that in your notes here. If you want to read the whole thing, you can read Ezekiel 1 through 14, but I'm not going to take up class time to do it. But here's part of that. Then he said to me, so this would be God saying to Ezekiel, he said to me, Son of man. Ezekiel called himself Son of Man, by the way, or God called Ezekiel Son of Man. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say our bones are dried and our hope is gone, we are cut off. So the Jews felt like they were never coming back again. They had been pushed out by Hadrian, and for 2,000 years they were never, the Muslims ran the place, they were never coming back again. They say our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. So God is comparing them to the dry bones of a skeleton that's just rotting in the sun in the desert. We are cut off. O my people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. So God is promising Israel that he will bring them back from this 1900 years in here that they were gone. God is promising the Jews that he will do that. I will put my spirit in you, so God will once again put Judaism into them. I will put my spirit in you and you will live. Live means more than just be alive. Live means have God inside of you, right? You will live. And I will settle you in your own land. So God is clearly telling the Jews through this Ezekiel prophecy and all the other ones I just talked about that they're coming back someday, and they did, and that happened in 1948. So we know that had to happen because as we look at all the rapture stuff, it all talks about it happening in Israel, and Israel doing this and that, and the temple and things like that. So we know that had to happen. So for the first time in 2,900 years, in 1948, Israel, or 1967 really, Israel was reestablished as an independent country, and it was reconstituted as a whole nation again. So that happened finally, just as God promised us that it would. Now we know some other things. We know from Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:15, and Revelation 13:4 that not only will Israel have to be here for the rapture and for the tribulation, but that the temple will have to be rebuilt. The temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago. Right? The temple has never been rebuilt, but we know that it will be, not necessarily before the rapture, but it will be by the midpoint of the tribulation, which is 3.5 years into the tribulation. We know that there are 3 different verses, and I gave you those verses: Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:15, and Revelation 13:4. Those 3 verses all say that at the midpoint in the tribulation, the temple will be there, because the Antichrist will go up to the temple and desecrate it. So that's about the story of the creation of the state of Israel. Any questions before we move on? Okay, now, why is Israel important to getting us ready for what's coming? And the way I put it up here is, watch what's happening in Israel. The thing I would, if you're wondering how close are we to the rapture, how close are we to the tribulation and to Jesus' return, the place to watch is watch the news about what's going on in Israel. If you watch the news about what's going on in Israel, that's your best place to figure out how God's really moving in the world and how he's moving us toward the rapture. So let's kind of go through some pieces of that. First one I'm going to go through with you is Joel 3:2. Joel 3:2 says that at some point Israel will be forced into what's called the 2-state solution. Joel says, I will gather all nations. This is the Antichrist's army he's talking about. I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat, by the way, is a valley in Israel. The center of that is a place called Megiddo, which is an old ruins from a long time ago, even before the time of Israel. And in Greek, it's called Armageddon. So I will bring them down to Armageddon, right? I will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will enter into judgment against them. That would be the Armageddon war. There I will enter into judgment against them concerning my inheritance, my people Israel. So God is going to destroy the armies of the Antichrist in the valley of Jehoshaphat because they will be attacking Israel. So Israel has to exist at this point for this to happen, right? The people, the Jews, have to be back. Remember, they weren't here until very recently, 100 years ago. They weren't here. So they have to be back in order for this prophecy to be fulfilled. So, since the Oslo Peace Accords in 1995, the United Nations at that time, and 3 American presidents since then, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, have all tried to force Israel into what's called the 2-state solution. You'll see that in the papers every now and then. It's clear that it's going to happen at some point. God is telling us right there in Joel 3:2 that it is going to happen. Israel doesn't want it. They know that it will lead to the destruction of their country when it happens. Israel doesn't want it, but it's clear from Joel 3:2 that it's going to happen. So who's going to make it happen? Right now, Israel's army is strong, and nobody's going to beat Israel's army. So it's going to take somebody who can control the entire world to do that, the Antichrist. So the Antichrist, and by the way, that section in Joel 3:2 is talking about the Antichrist. I'm not going to read you that whole passage. It's 2 chapters long, but it's talking about what the Antichrist will do when he comes into the world. So the Antichrist will be the one who will cut Israel in 2. So when you see Israel getting ready to be cut in 2, you'll know that the Antichrist is very close at hand. And we know from what's happened since 1995 that it's getting closer and closer. God does not want Israel divided. He gave it to Abraham as a united nation, one nation. He made it very clear it is one nation. So that's been very clear. Let's talk next about Iran. Israel's mortal enemy, Iran, has been developing nuclear weapons, or trying to develop nuclear weapons. Within the last few weeks, we have seen that brought to, I won't say a conclusion, but brought to at least a pause. So at this point, Iran is no longer very close to developing a nuclear weapon. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus, for making that happen. That would have been devastating to the peace of the world, and it would have been devastating to Israel, because the leaders of Iran said, as soon as we get it, we're going to use it against Israel. So that clearly is a step that's pushing us away. Up until that, I would have said the rapture's coming relatively soon. Now I'm saying, well, maybe it's a little bit further away than I had thought, but we don't know. But those are some of the things that we're looking at. But Israel is surrounded by enemies. Israel has enemies in Hezbollah, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Hamas, in Syria, the Houthis, who are way down in Yemen, 1,000 miles away, the West Bank, and some others. There are some other Sunni Arab enemies in addition to Iran. So Israel has a lot of enemies. Israel right now seems to be doing very well against those enemies, but 2 years ago on October 7th, they weren't doing very well. So this current war has been going on now since October 7th. Oh, by the way, some other countries that are not necessarily out-and-out enemies of Israel, Turkey and Russia, are countries that have kind of coordinated with a lot of this. Turkey has done a lot with some of the fundamentalist Muslim groups that took over Syria, for example. And Russia is always seeming to get their fingers into issues that are trouble and evil. So since October 7th of 2023, we've been in a war, or Israel's been in a war. And that war appears to be in somewhat of a pause right now, although Israel's still fighting in Hamas in Gaza. And they're still fighting against the Houthis. As recently as this week, they sank a Houthi ship down there. So it's still going on. One of the things people talk about is the Psalm 83 war. And the Psalm 83 war could be what we are seeing right now. I think it's possible. People have been talking to me about the Psalm 83 war for a long time. And they've said, do you think this? Do you think that? And a lot of people think the Psalm 83 war was the 1967 war, because it says in Psalm 83 that Israel is surrounded by enemies and that they will conquer all those enemies. Well, I think that's kind of just happened again, or it's in the process of happening right now. It did happen in 1967, but a lot of what happened in 1967 didn't lead to what the Psalm 83 war says. This one to me seems a little closer. I don't have time to go into the whole Psalm 83 war with you today, but if you have time, take a read through it, and it is possible that we may be seeing the Psalm 83 war right now going on. It's possible that this may be it, that the Psalm 83 war, which most people believe will happen sometime before the rapture. So next thing is, we know that the temple on Temple Mount has to be built by the midpoint of the tribulation. I said that earlier. It hasn't existed since 70 AD, so it has to be rebuilt. So that brings up first of all, where did we see that? I referred earlier to Daniel 9, Matthew 24, and Revelation 13. All three of them tell the same story about the Antichrist going up to the temple at the midpoint of the tribulation and cursing God and declaring himself to be God and desecrating the temple. Now, some interesting things about the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount was in Muslim hands until 1967, during the Six-Day War, and at that point Israel took over the Temple Mount, and for literally one day Israel had control of it. They actually flew Jewish flags on the Temple Mount for one day. And the next day, a guy by the name of Moshe Dayan, who was the defense minister of Israel at that time, turned it back over to the Muslims and said, we don't want this, we want you guys to control it. Probably not a smart decision in retrospect.
He was Egyptian.
Was he Egyptian? He was Egyptian?
He lived in Egypt.
Okay, well, Moshe Dayan, who was in charge of all the armies of Israel, turned it back over to the Muslims at that point and said, we don't want it, you take the Temple Mount. Well, today the Jews are realizing that probably that has put their cause back a long time, but obviously this is all in God's plan, the timing of all of this. So since then, no rebuilding's been allowed on top of Temple Mount. The Jews have not been allowed to rebuild the temple up there, which might have happened if Dayan hadn't said that day. By the way, the Jews only controlled Temple Mount for one day in 1967. Since then, it was before that it was in Muslim hands, and it's in Muslim hands again. So we know that somehow it's going to be rebuilt. The temple's going to be rebuilt. We assume from Joel that it's going to be done by the Antichrist. So the question is, what's the Antichrist have to do to make this happen? Well, he's got to broker some kind of deal that gets the Muslims to give up the right to let the Jews build the temple up there. Whatever that deal is, I don't know. My own thinking is that deal might involve the two-state solution. Maybe the deal is, and this is just a hypothesis, just a guess. Maybe the deal is, tell you what, Israel, if you'll do the two-state solution, we'll let you build the temple on Temple Mount. Maybe that'll be the deal. Maybe it won't. Maybe that'll be the deal. But to me, it's possible that those two might end up getting linked by the Antichrist. But all of that leads to the assumption that as you see the two-state solution becoming more of a likelihood, that's telling you that we are getting closer and closer to the Antichrist being able to control things. Right now, Israel has a great friend in the United States that's backing them up. But they have almost no other friends in the world. Very few other people in the world will really back Israel. If you don't believe me, take a look at all these UN resolutions that they pass. About every year they pass another UN resolution condemning Israel. And there are 190 members of the UN. Typically only about 22 people vote against that every year. So you got 170 nations of the world that vote against Israel every year in the United Nations. So Israel's not popular anywhere other than the United States.
Well, it depends on the president too. His last 4 years it was quite outside.
2 of our last 4 presidents have not been friendly to Israel. Obama was certainly not friendly to Israel, very definitely not friendly to Israel, and Biden was not friendly to Israel. He said he was, but what he said and what he did was different on that. So it's likely that the Antichrist is somehow going to broker a political solution to make the temple be rebuilt. But we don't know. That's going to, that will happen sometime. That actual rebuilding will happen sometime during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. So that's, just keep your eye on what's happening in Israel. Those are the basic trends that are leading us toward the rapture, the trends I've been talking about. So keep your eye on what's going on in Israel. Read the news. Deb knows I pull up Jerusalem Post articles all the time on my cell phone because I want to know what's going on in Israel on things. So keep your eye on what's going on in Israel. Keep your eye on the political situation. Keep your eye, interestingly enough, on the legal situation. They have a massive problem with their judiciary. If you think we have an out-of-control judiciary here in the United States, theirs is way more out of control than ours is. Let's take a look at the third one. The third one comes from Matthew 24. It's the fig tree is blooming. The fig tree is Israel in the scriptures. The fig tree is used in the scriptures to denote Israel. And let's talk about this. In 1947, at the end of when Israel, 1948, when Israel was being established, there were 600,000 Jews there at the time, of people that are called core Jews. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but that's people who can identify that both parents were fully Jewish. So in essence, you need 4 grandparents to be Jewish to be core Jew, if that makes sense to you. So there was 600,000 core Jews in 1948. Today that number is 7.2 million. So that's a total of 12 times in my lifetime. I was born in 1948. So in my lifetime, Israel has increased the number of Jews by a factor of 12 times. It's huge. Today they are the majority by far in Israel.
Not for long. The Palestinians are growing more than...
Palestinians are having way more babies, yes.
1.3 per family.
Yeah, well.
The Jewish family, only 1 child or less.
When you walk around the streets of Jerusalem, it's incredible to see all the pregnant Arab women walking around the streets of Jerusalem. It's
going to be a dilemma in 20 years, 25 years, when they become a majority. That could be part of that.
Could be, yeah. So, what have the Jews brought with them over the last 70 years? They've brought great entrepreneurial skills. They've brought large amounts of money. They've brought great educational achievements and great scientific achievements. Today, Israel is definitely a first world nation. We just saw that with the way they fought this war, right? I mean, Iran fired thousands of ballistic missiles at Israel, and how many people died? It was under 50, wasn't it? In Israel died, and that it wasn't a lot. I mean, if you figure thousands of massive ballistic missiles with massive warheads hitting Tel Aviv, the biggest city in your country, that was where they were aiming them, and yet only, a few dozen people die. There's some technology there. They use some technology. They call it they called it Iron Dome. Iron Dome. They use some technology that's advanced. We're buying some of that technology to create The one that Trump wants to create, he calls it Golden Dome, which will protect our entire country against incoming missiles from China and Russia. So they are pioneering a lot of that technology. There's a lot of other technology. They've got medical technology is very advanced in Israel. Some of our top procedures in the world are coming out of Israel. Some of the best hospitals in the world are coming out of Israel. Biotech is, Israel is one of the great world leaders in the world in biotechnology right now. Desalination, Israel desalinates most of their water. There's very few places in the world that are desalinating ocean water and turning it into drinking water and water to do fields, to water fields. But Israel's doing it. They're leading the world in that. As I said, missile defense, just a whole lot of high-tech industries. Every place you go in Jerusalem, I mean in Tel Aviv, you see people that are involved in high-tech kinds of industries. One of the interesting things is, and this isn't well known, but when we visited Jerusalem, we spent some time studying under a rabbi there who was, his wife works for one of the major hospitals in Jerusalem. And her job was to very quietly bring in the children of royal family members around the Arab world into the hospital for medical procedures, because Israel is so far advanced above other Arab countries around them in medical procedures. So if you're the king of someplace or other in the Middle East and your child needs medical help, they sent them to Israel very quietly. And this lady, her job was to make it completely quiet. So nobody knew the kids were coming in, nobody knew where they were being treated, what they were being treated for. Kids went out, but that was her job, was to make sure that these children were treated. I mean, these are humanitarian people that were being treated in Israel for the various things that were ailing them. So we actually met him and talked to him about what his wife did. Some other things. I'm talking about the subject here is the fig tree is blooming. The fig tree is Israel, right? So we're talking about Israel blooming technologically, but she's blooming in other ways as well. When you drive around Israel, you can see the difference between Israel proper and the West Bank immediately. The West Bank is very deserty area. Israel proper, there are beautiful farmlands going on everywhere. Israel's bringing water in to create.
They are the best horticultural country in the world.
Yeah. I mean, you name the fruit, it grows there. You name the grain, it grows there. You name the vegetable, it grows there. They export fruit and food all over Europe, all over the world. Literally, they're making the desert bloom in Israel. The fig tree is blooming right now. So we are seeing.
One of the things that was fascinating, if you're driving past these farms, you'd see a plot where they had bananas growing, and right next to it, they had apples growing. Two different climates were required for these fruits, and yet they figured out how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, the desert is absolutely blooming. So the fig tree is blooming in Israel right now. Some other things that are going on, Israel is rapidly becoming self-sufficient in natural gas. They have natural gas deposits off the coast that they're developing. That's happening in front of us, so Israel's less dependent on having to import oil and gas from other people around the world. The two times we've been there, one of the things that amazed me as we flew into the airport in Tel Aviv was the cranes in the sky. The construction in Israel is massive. It's just going on everywhere. With the war going on, I'm not sure if there's as much right now, but both times we were in Israel, we saw just cranes dotting the sky. It was like, there were more cranes than there were skyscrapers, actually, when we were going in there. The building that's going on there is massive. As we said, Jews are coming in from all over the world. Many of them are coming into Tel Aviv. In Zechariah 8:12, so by the way, the economy is one of the best on earth. It is really, the economy is booming. One of the interesting things that I found just fascinating in Israel, land prices are through the roof there. It's like California land prices.
An apartment in that east side is $2 million.
In East
That's
Jerusalem.
when the Messiah comes back, so everybody wants to.
Everybody wants to be on the Mount of Olives when Jesus comes back. Yeah. Many Jews, wealthy Jews here in the United States, own second homes in Israel, because if things ever get bad, they want to be able to just pick up and move. If they've looked at other countries around the world that how Jews have been persecuted everywhere else except the United States, And if that ever comes here, they want to be able to move. They want to be able to pick up and move. We actually know some people who have close family members or have other homes in Israel and whatnot. So,
Can I ask a question about, we're talking about the green as all the economic and everything. How about morally? How about,
morally, there's two different parts of Israel. You have Jerusalem and you have Tel Aviv. If you go into Tel Aviv is like being in San Francisco, okay? The morality is not real great in Tel Aviv. It's just like being in any other big city in the world, and to me it's even more almost San Francisco-y compared
it's the
to...
capital of gay and lesbian?
I wasn't going to say it exactly in those words, but there's, depending upon your, yeah. So that Tel Aviv is very tolerant of a lot of different moralities. Jerusalem's totally different. In Jerusalem, you have just serious Jews. Everybody's in, not everybody, but many people are in the black outfits, and it's serious believers in Judaism are in Jerusalem. So you really kind of have two different groups in
And I
Israel.
also add, there are more than 30,000 Messianic Jews who live too there. That's a
Yes.
whole.
Whole nother thing. I'm not going to get into that today. I'd love to, but we don't have time
But the
today
two,
to do
remember the
that.
couple that were killed
Yeah.
in the celebration in New York? Both of them were Messianic.
They were
Jews.
Messianic Jews. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, Messianic Jews are Jews who believe in Jesus, Jews who have accepted Jesus as their Messiah. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Didn't know that. So Zechariah 8:12 says, "The seed will grow well, the vine will yield its fruit, the ground will produce its crops, and the heavens will yield their dew." So Zechariah is talking about this period that's going on right now in Israel, just before the rapture occurs. He's saying basically things are going to be great in Israel economically. The thing I was going to say, I didn't quite finish it. One of the things that amazed me in Israel, you cannot get a mortgage. If you want to buy property in Israel, you must pay cash. There are no mortgages in Israel. You cannot get them. They don't exist. So people, very high value real estate, no ability to buy with a mortgage. Most people rent in Israel. Most normal people rent. But you can see the amount of money that's pouring into Israel, into Israel's economy from around the world by that fact. The fact that you can't get a mortgage in Israel. Interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to read you from Matthew 24. This Matthew 24 is the is called the okay, I just lost my train there. Sorry about that. It's called it's called the Olivet Discourse. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it happened on the Mount of Olives. And by the way, it's those of you who watched The Chosen, we were watching it this week, and they had part of the Olivet Discourse on there. But any rate, Matthew 24:32, here's what Jesus says about the fig tree, about what's going to happen at this point just before the rapture. He says, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near." Summer's near, right? "Even so, when you see these things, you know that it," and he's talking about the rapture here, "it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation," the generation that sees the greening of Israel right now, "this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened." If you know what all these things are from Matthew 24, we're talking about the rapture and the tribulation, all that stuff. So as I've been in Israel and looked at what's going on out there, just the incredible growth of what's going on there and the greening of Israel that's going on, I'm thinking we're getting closer. We are not 2,000 years away from the rapture again. We are a lot closer than that. I don't know how close, but we're a lot closer. Questions on that? Okay, let's move on to the next point. Jews are returning to Israel. As I said, there are 7.2 million core Jews in Israel today. That is 46% of all the Jews in the world are already in Israel. Now remember, 100 years ago, that number was almost zero. So 46% of all the Jews in the world are already in Israel today. Where are the others? 40% are in the United States.
Almost in New York.
Yep.
When I was a boy growing up in the New York area, the joke, not the joke, but the humorous thing that people said at that time was that there were more Jews in Brooklyn than there were in Israel. Well, that's not true today. But it was true in the 1960s when I was growing up there, that there were a lot of Jews in New York and not many in Israel. Well, today that's flipping rapidly. There are already more Jews in that little country of Israel than there are in the entire United States. And we are second in the world. We have 40% of the world's Jews. We have 5.7 million core Jews here in the United States. Now, if you do the math, 100% minus 46 for Israel, minus 40 for the United States, that means there's only 14% of the world's Jews are in the other 190 countries of the world combined. Jews are almost extinct anywhere other than Israel and the United States right now. We were in Egypt last year and we went to a Jewish synagogue there. There are no Jews left that are worshiping anymore at that synagogue, right? We were in, you were with us, yeah. We were in a Jewish synagogue. There are no Jews worshiping at that synagogue anymore. Beautiful building. Today it's a museum in Egypt. Egypt has kept it open as a museum, and it still has, you can still see where the Torah was and things like that. But there aren't any Jews worshiping there anymore. And that's true in many, many places around the world. It's rapidly becoming true in Europe. Jews are leaving Europe rapidly. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in the United States to a smaller extent. When I saw some of the presidents we've had in recent years, I thought it would go a lot quicker. And it has been happening a little bit quicker with some of the recent presidents we've had. But it's not happening. I don't think it will happen here in the United States until the true persecution of Jews happens. And I think we can bet that that's coming at some point. We don't know when. But at some point we will have an administration and a Congress and all that that will persecute Jews. It's almost certainly going to happen. It's happened in the other 190 countries in the world, so what makes you think it won't happen here? So Jews are returning. Zechariah 8:7-8, there are all kinds of verses about the Jews returning. I read you one earlier, but Zechariah 8:7-8 is one of my favorites. It says, "This is what the Lord Almighty says, I will save my people from the countries of the east and the west. I will bring them back to live in Jerusalem. They will be my people, and I will be faithful and righteous to them as their God." That doesn't say it any clearer. You can't say it any clearer than that, right? God is bringing Jews back to Israel. So Jews are coming back to Israel very rapidly at this point. Every day, new planes land from someplace in the world with Jews coming into Israel. And yes, Muslims are definitely having lots of babies. So there's a population growth going on in Israel, going from both sides.
Huh? Population fight.
Yeah, it's a population fight. I think both sides understand. The Jews understand that they're not willing to have 4.3 babies per family, so they need to bring more Jews back. And the Muslims understand that their way to win is to have more babies. Like I said, you walk around the streets and it's
You have 2 million. The 2 million multiply that much within the next 20 years.
So many, as I said, many wealthy expatriate Jews are buying property in Israel right now. We know some people that are doing that. Many expatriate Jews, even in the United States, have contingency plans to be able to move to Israel if they need to. I mean, you look at some of the things like 2 people being assassinated in Washington, D.C., 2 Jews, a couple of weeks ago. And
the Egyptian guy in Colorado who doused the Jewish people.
Yeah, it's
Molotov.
You know, Jewish people look at that stuff and they say, how long am I still going to be safe in the United States?
Anti-Semitism is just...
Oh, anti-Semitism at Columbia University and some of those places, just outrageous anti-Semitism.
Well, where are these people going to do for a living that move to Israel? They're not well enough educated to be in the fields that Israel's economy has. They just don't have, we just don't have that education.
Well, you might be surprised, first of all, at the educational level of some of the people that are coming in. So these are some of the best and brightest people in the world are Jewish. I mean, Albert Einstein was a Jew. Did you ever look at the number of Nobel Prizes won by Jewish people over the years? It is enormous. I mean, for a group that makes up 0.0-something% of the population in the world, they've won, what, 20 or 30% of the Nobel Prizes ever. Jewish people have focused on education for a long time.
They are the best universities in the world. Actually.
Yeah, you might be surprised at the educational level of people in Israel and
well, they
what's
have
coming
it,
in.
but we who are going to relocate over there, do we have it?
some of us do, what I'm saying is some of us do, some of us don't, but the ones who don't are putting their kids into the Israeli education system, and their kids are going to have it, certainly in the next generation.
Just made me wonder what they're gonna do for a living when they get there.
They don't go on welfare, that's not, that's not the deal over there. I mean, they will be productive, they will find ways to be productive.
Do they not
There's,
have welfare?
the economy is booming at such a rate over there that I think there are plenty of jobs available. Now, things are a little different right now with the war going on, I think. I haven't been in Israel since
Yeah,
the
they're
war.
really stagnant
But-
economic at this point.
Yeah, I think right now Israel's suffering because they're not allowing flights to come in. There's no tourism. There hasn't been tourism for almost 2 years there.
So back up a minute, did you say there's no welfare in Israel?
I don't think the welfare is like it is here. I don't think it's like you get off the plane. I mean, I think, let me put it this way. I think if you are a Jew coming in from someplace around the world, from an impoverished nation, where they're driving you out, yes, I think they're gonna take care of you and help you get going. But I don't think they're gonna put you on welfare for the rest of your life. I think they're gonna expect you to get with the program and get something going in your life.
But there's welfare for the group that is conservative, that has kids, that they keep bringing kids up for the numbers. And they live on the expense of the government, and they don't go to the military, they don't work, their job is to bear children.
I don't know that I would say it quite that dramatically as you just did, but
Well, I mean-
my perception, many of the very Orthodox Jews,
You troublemaker.
I know.
Orthodox Jews under current law in Israel are not required to serve in the military,
Yeah.
and that is a problem.
And there's a war now that
And that is a
makes them go-
huge issue in the Israeli government. Orthodox Jews don't have to serve in the military. Problem, right?
Yeah,
It's a country where serving in the military is critical.
yeah.
So Orthodox
It's
Jews do
mandatory
not have to serve in the
For
military.
every
Yeah,
child.
I'm getting, I
sorry.
gotta get going.
I guess-
Okay, so let's look at some other things. The church, another thing that has to happen is the church age has to conclude, right? We're gonna be gone in the rapture, so the church age has to conclude. The place to look is the church of Laodicea, which is, interestingly enough, is chapters 2 and 3 of the book of Revelation. It's about the 7 churches. Now, the 7 churches were 7 literal churches right around Ephesus in those days, and where John was in those days. But most people, as you look at Jesus' description of them, many people see in that a description of the history of the church over the last 2,000 years, starting with the Apostles' Church, the first one, and going on all the way to the Church of Laodicea. And the key things about the Church of Laodicea, let me read you something from Revelation about the Church of Laodicea. That is the last church, the one before the rapture. Let me read you something about the church and see if it doesn't sound a little bit like our church, or not our church, but churches around the world today. This is Revelation 3. I'll just start in verse 14. To the angel of the church in Laodicea write, these are the words of the Amen, the faithful and true witness, the ruler of God's creation. That would be Jesus. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. So, Church of Laodicea, does anybody see our world today, that people in the church today are neither cold nor hot? They really don't care anymore about the church very much. You are neither cold nor hot. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Now the actual word spit in Greek that's used here is vomit. Vomit you out of my mouth. So God is about to vomit the church of Laodicea out of his mouth, the last church, because it's neither cold nor hot. It's not on fire for him. Do we see a lot of churches around us in the world that are not on fire for God today? Let's continue. You say, I am rich. Do we see any rich churches? And do we see rich people in our country today, right? People that don't care because, hey, I got enough money. I don't need God. I can take care of myself, right? You say, I am rich. I have acquired wealth. I do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. So God is saying, you might think you're rich, but you're really lacking in the important stuff, right? I counsel you to buy from the gold refined in the fire so that you can become rich. In other words, don't worry about this fake, this gold that you think you need. Get the real gold, the gold that you get by refining yourself in the fire of faith. So you can become rich and white clothes to wear so that you can cover your shameful nakedness. So, just cover the nakedness, cover the sinfulness that you've put on you. and salve to put on your eyes so you can see. So you might think you can see today, but you really are not seeing what you need to see. Those whom I love I rebuke and discipline, so be earnest and repent. So God's telling them, repent. Here I am. I stand at the door. Things are coming quick, right? When you get to the church of Laodicea. I stand at the door and knock. Jesus is knocking for us. We talked about this earlier in our prayer time. Jesus is knocking. He wants us to come to him. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him and he with me. So just come to me and I'll be with you. To him who overcomes, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear. Let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So are we in a Church of Laodicea environment today? Are we in an environment today where people around the world, at least in our country, are rich, Europe too, and basically say, I don't need God anymore. I've got money. With money, I can protect myself. I don't need God to protect me. I've got money. Do we see that attitude in people today? I mean, people today have a lot more money, and one of the things we've seen as we've been in various churches over the world is, or over time, I worked for IBM once, which stands for I've been moved. One of the things we saw is the richer the church, the less people were committed to the Lord. And we were in some very rich churches over time. And the richer the church, the less committed people are. The more it's like, hey, I've got money. Why do I need God? Are we in that situation today? Are we there? Are we in that point today where we are the Church of Laodicea? If we are, then we are the last church before Christ comes back. Let me go next into apostasy. I may not finish all these today. Let me go next into apostasy. Apostasy means walking away from your faith. Apostasy comes from the Greek word apostasia, which means rebellion. So rebelling against God and walking away from your faith. It says in two major places in the Bible. One of them is in Revelation 3:10. The other is in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. It says in both of those that people will walk away from their faith in the days before the rapture. Do we see that happening in the world, right? Do you know that the most exploding area in the latest census under religion is the word none? People who say they have no religion is growing at a tremendous rate. Christians are shrinking, Jews are shrinking, everybody else is shrinking, but people who say they have no religion is growing rapidly in the census, in the latest census. Many people around our country are looking at it and saying, what do I need religion for? I don't need it. That is apostasy. That is walking away from your faith. It's happening in our country. Now, there are places in the world where it's not happening. There are places in the world where people are coming to faith at very rapid rates because God is bringing them there. But that's another piece we can talk about, is that God is saying everybody's going to get an opportunity to come to faith. So there are places in the world that are coming to faith right now, but places that have been in faith for a long time, like the United States and Europe, are going the other way. People are walking away from their faith. It's apostasy. Next one is lawlessness will increase and deception will increase. Anybody see that on our media today? Deception increasing? Anybody see that on the streets of some of our cities today? Lawlessness increasing? Yeah, take a look at Los Angeles, right? Before that it was Seattle and Portland and Minneapolis and a whole lot of Chicago, the death rate in Chicago. You know, lawlessness is increasing and deception is increasing. There are two places it says that. One of them is in 2 Thessalonians, too many S's. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and the other is Matthew 24:10. And they both say that as we get close to the rapture, lawlessness will increase and deception will increase. So those are two things we can look for. Another interesting thing, churches teaching false doctrine. Speaking of deception, I'm talking here about more than just deception about politics. I'm talking about deception about faith. Churches teaching false doctrine. Anybody see that going on?
Yeah, right here in Fort Wayne.
Yeah. Deb and I came out of a church in Grand Rapids that was moving way left. We came out of a couple churches before that were in other places that were moving way left. Yeah, there's a lot of theology going on, a lot of arguments going on in many mainline Protestant churches today, and to some extent even within the Catholic Church, although that's kind of going back and forth. But there's a lot of argument going on about various theologies. You know, do we believe in that? Yeah. Deb just read me a thing the other day from the Barna Group that said, what is it, only 70% of the pastors in America believe God exists. Interesting. We'll talk some more about this next week, but let's just say lawlessness is going up and deception is going up, and it's unfortunately deception is coming into our churches. Things are being brought into our churches that have no business being in our churches, and they're causing churches to blow themselves up. We were in a church that blew itself up. We've seen that happen where false teaching gets into a church, and next thing you know, the church, God just won't bless that church anymore. So one of the cool things about our church is we're focused on getting proper teaching out there, and that's so important, because if we have proper teaching and proper preaching, both, then God will bless the church. That's the key. Okay, I'm getting the hook too many times back there. For those of you at home, we will finish this off next week, by the way. For those of you at home, please have a great week, and we pray the Lord will be with you, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.